So what's jhana?
Well, people think jhana is something you can enter. You can't enter jhana. Jhana enters you, basically. Jhana is the result, a mode of being.
Okay. It's the result. It's the consequence.
Yeah.
Of.
We'll get to that. That's why Buddha said there is no I am in jhana. You can't say I am in jhana, I'm entering jhana, I was in jhana. It subsides. For as long as you think jhana is something you can enter, literally, something waiting for you to enter it, that's not jhana.
Yeah. So, is it worth saying that often in the translations of the jhanas, it says that one enters upon and dwells in jhana.
And that's wrong.
That's wrong.
He doesn't say that in Pali.
No, it says
one dwells in jhana having acquired it.
Having upasampaja, whatever.
Whatever, even enter it, if you want to translate it like that. But the point is,
it's something that's already happened.
Based on the consequence of jhana, of your mode of being, now, you know you acquired it. Not other way around. I acquired it, and thus I entered it, and that's how I dwell in it. Which is usually the perception of it. Meditation technique, object, having an overwhelming experience, surge of pleasure or whatever. Oh, I enter jhana, now I am in the jhana. It's a completely wrong order. So when I say jhana enters you, it's more accurate to regard it like that. It's basically, as I said, mode of being, or even becomes your point of view, your new point of view. Point of view that doesn't see I am as first.
So it's it's a point of view that involves a different order.
Yes, and that's a result of certain contemplations, certain understanding, certain development of the mind. And if you wonder which type of development of the mind, just read literally any jhana description. It says it clear as a day.
So, off the top of my head, quite secluded from
seclusion from sensuality.
Sense desire,
There is absolutely no description of the first jhana that does not say that. Like, that's just one way you can enter it. No, it's always. So jhana is the result of your seclusion. Seclusion is not because of your jhana. Jhana is because seclusion. And if you have any doubt about that, it's within the same description.
It is,
the pleasure. The pleasure of the first jhana is not of the first jhana. The pleasure is of the seclusion.
Viveka jhana. So piti sukhang viveka jhana. So it's the bliss and
joy, whatever you want to translate it.
Born of the
seclusion. Yes.
From sense desire or sensuality
and unwholesome states, which pertains to any kind of bodily hindrances of any kind. But the common notion is, I enter jhana, then I feel pleasure. No, pleasure comes first. Not pleasure of jhana, but pleasure of seclusion, which is what jhana is. Which is, at the time, that's what your point of view becomes. That's what your being is. There is no room for I am experiencing this pleasure, I am entering, I am exiting this jhana and whatnot. So, very clear, Pali, yet the entire contemporary notion are about watching your nostrils, having the ecstatic experience,
stopping thinking.
Stop your thinking, of course, and then you have this surge of pleasure, and there must have been jhana then.
So the standard idea of jhana being absorption, involving not thinking, you can't have the idea of thinking with jhana, and yet these words vitakka vichara appear.
Are the main characteristic of the first jhana.
So you get these strange translations of it's not really thinking, it's like a sustained thought and applied.
It's literally thinking. Vitakka and vichara always go together as well.
Yeah.
And it literally is just amplifying the same. With thinking, with pondering, with things going on in his mind, that's the first jhana. Doesn't say, oh, with thinking, the first factor, with pondering, with the second factor. Nor is it applied and sustained thought and in some sort of concocted method that you do. No, it's with thinking and with pondering.
Yeah.
Just with wandering, with roaming about.
Yeah, so they're not really different things.
Exactly. Just slightly two different aspects, I suppose, of your thinking, which are kind of inseparable, practically speaking.
Near synonyms to talk about maybe a different extent.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so that's another extremely gratuitous notion of my thinking will stop in the first jhana. I had this experience where I was not aware of myself.
Yeah, not just thinking, all the senses
of anything,
stop.
Yet in Majjhima 111, every single jhana has this absolute clarity of mindfulness as its basis.
Yeah.
And brings mindfulness to fulfillment. Yeah.
This phenomenon, seeing all of these things.
Exactly. See what's there. Yeah. So basically, it's imperturbable mindfulness, not the absence of it. So how you want to develop first jhana? Seclude yourself from sensuality. How can you seclude yourself from sensuality? By understanding the extent of it. The extent of your involvement, the extent of your engagement. The basis, the necessary basis for your engagement with sensuality. You understand that, you surmount it. Having surmounted it, you will know that you surmounted it. And then that pleasure of relief, which is the pleasure of the first jhana, it will be felt. And that's what first jhana is. The result of that development, basically. So you could see how, like even back in the day, jhana, as we discussed before, even in old Vedas and stuff, meant contemplation. Investigating even, thinking over, pondering over something, like either a virtues of a deity that you want to develop in yourself or anything else. But the point was, you dwell on it in order to develop it.
You think about it.
Yeah, you're not like trying to negate the whole idea of thinking.
Yeah.
If you want to surmount your thinking, that's the second jhana. And you can't surmount the second your thinking if you haven't even developed it properly.
Yeah.
If all you do is go around denying it.
So, but the jhanas involve a particular theme.
Yeah. Well, think of jhanas as particularly directed mindfulness. That's why in all those in some other suttas, it's like you can develop jhana on the basis of mindfulness of the corpse.
Yeah.
You can develop jhana on the basis of mindfulness of the charnel ground or of the disgusting the senses or mindfulness of breathing or body postures. So it's not an automatic method, it's just a way of regarding things on the basis of mindfulness.
On the basis of mindfulness.
Way of regarding what? Sensuality. Way of regarding sensuality whereby you remind yourself the extent of it that you know you are free from. Dwell in that is the bliss of the first jhana. That is, so, as I said, like the first jhana is not developed by magically entering it and then having pleasure from it. The actual technique, the practice of meditation of the first jhana is the practice of understanding the sensual extent, the extent of unwholesome. That is your practice of first jhana. That's why it's impossible to engage in sensuality on the basis of first jhana. That's why the one with the right view on the basis of first jhana would be free from sensuality even when he's not anymore in the first jhana. Because he would have been seen clearly its nature of actually being repulsive. So that's just to basically combat the idea that you can not be celibate and not keep the precepts and enter jhanas. Impossible. Like a necessary basis for the consequence of jhana, first jhana, is quite secluded from sensual pleasures. Quite removed, basically. Separated
quite
from,
as in
completely,
as in
thoroughly,
basically, yeah.
Quite as in indeed.
Yeah, exactly.
Indeed, he's separate from it.
Yeah, and he's developed that. He's over time
separate from sensual states, separate from unwholesome states. pleasure arises as a result of the recognition of that. He cultivates that very thing. And that's how he abides in the first jhana. And that's what Buddha said. He would dwell in the first jhana, having acquired it, and then whether he sits, walks, extends his arms, goes to the toilet, whatever he does while he dwells in the first jhana, it's divine, because his mind is in the first jhana.
Yeah.
And that's what viharati means, dwelling. Doesn't mean temporarily overwhelmed by something. It means literally you're dwelling. So while you're dwelling in this kuti, you eat, you drink, you lay down, you sit, you're doing these things while you're dwelling in it. And it's the same principle of the jhana. So more specifically, practicing practicing the first jhana, which means practicing with separation from unwholesome states and sensuality, is done not by chasing down the sensual states, but by seeing a common basis to all unwholesome states, to all 5 hindrances. That's why the 5 hindrances are the 5 that are abandoned in the first jhana. Sensuality, ill will, restlessness, laziness, distraction, doubt. What all of those things have in common? What is the necessary basis, necessary container?
Body?
Yeah. Body being there. And see, even when people were to engage with them, say you were overwhelmed by hindrance and you give in to sensuality or expression of ill will or whatever, you're not really leaving the body. You can't, even if you want. You're not actually going further into these things. You're just basically increasing their density, so to speak, density of their significance within the same basis. That's why anger is felt bodily, sensuality is felt bodily, doubt is felt bodily.
Yeah, that's so some people, that's not so obvious that doubt is bodily.
Yeah, but how do you know that doubt is unpleasant?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you feel it unpleasantly. Your body's affected. You can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
What's more bodily than that? Yeah. It's very bodily. So the body is the necessary basis for any of the hindrances.
Yeah.
But does that mean that the hindrances hinder you because of the body?
No.
So sensuality cannot be manifested, cannot be even conceived theoretically without the basis of body.
Yeah.
Or anywhere else except within the basis of body.
Yeah.
But is that its hindering aspect?
No,
why is it a hindrance, in other words?
It's a hindrance when you don't put the body first.
And when is it that you don't put the body first as a necessary basis?
When you put yourself first.
And what does that mean in regard to between you and the body? What kind of relationship is that?
Ownership.
Yeah. So that's why, again, it all comes sort of being rooted in sense of mind. As in, because this body is unknown to me in any other terms except as mine, that's why I'm affected by these things that are bodily.
Yeah.
And that's why we compare the 5 senses, the 5 bodily senses, the 5 bodily domains, as 5 wild animals that have their own respective domains for feeding.
Yeah.
You can't possibly sort of go and deplete their food.
Yeah.
So they'll starve. Impossible.
Yeah.
But you can stop being appropriate.
And
you can stop appropriating basically them.
You also have no say over their
And
preferences.
you have no say over their preferences. No.
What the eye likes. The
Yeah.
eye likes.
Yeah. Doesn't mean you're not responsible for giving into it. That's the point.
Yeah.
See,
that's
like
else.
my eye likes this.
Yeah.
The tongue likes this. But that, on the level of recognition, of a fact of preference, does not mean automatic engagement with it.
No.
Now, based on that pull, based on this animal wants to go and feed down there, I give in and I let it do that. Yeah. So that's why we're responsible for sensuality, not for its arising, but it's basically for its perpetuation, for engaging with it. So you hinder yourself.
Yeah, by basically allowing yourself to be dragged along by those senses.
And how you allow yourself to be dragged along? By taking the ownership. And as you said, the ownership means wrong order, as we discussed in previous talks. Yeah. So, which is the right order then?
Basically.
What is the order of central pull or expression of ill will or doubt? What is the order? What is it that comes first in that experience?
Well, me.
Seemingly.
Me.
But more specifically.
Well,
it's the particular hindrance.
Okay.
You see that as coming first.
Okay.
See, now I have my mind is affected by doubt.
Yeah. Okay.
So I go around and I search and I talk and I find, because I do all these bodily things to get rid of this core doubt of my experience, which is the doubt.
And everything that you're doing is rooted in that. Yes.
But would that doubt be manifested there, felt unpleasantly, if the body is not there on its own beforehand?
No. So if basically recognize mindfulness of the body, recognize that the container of body without which.
So that mindfulness is established, whereby it doesn't matter the hindrance.
Yeah.
You don't pervert the order. Yeah. And that's how you become quite secluded from sensuality. Why? Because you have quite removed the necessary basis for sensuality to take over you. Yeah. Necessary basis, which is that perversion of that order. Yeah.
So now, basically...
So that's why your actions have to have been purified beforehand as well.
Yeah.
You have to say no to yourself. You have to practice sense restraint. In order then to discern the necessary basis for those things, if they were to be done, and then you stop maintaining that basis, which is the wrong order.
So the hindrances are now seen as
belonging to the body that doesn't belong to you.
Exactly, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Which means they don't hinder you anymore.
No,
means they're not hindrances.
Yeah, they're fully bound up in, contained in, rooted in something which
is the body. They're fully bound up and rooted in the body, and they always were. Yeah. That's why recognition of that, full understanding of that, frees you from them forever. Not just while you're looking at it. Initially, you have to keep looking at it to be free from it. Once you fully understood hindrances, that's why Arahant is the destroyer of the hindrances. So when there is sleepiness, it's the body that is sleeping. Yeah. And the doubt can never be the fundamental doubt. It can be like, did he say this or did he say that? But none of that doubt can become the hindrance how it used to be.
Yeah. Could you use feeling as a basis to surmount the hindrances?
Yeah, any reference for mindfulness, any mindfulness
because
basis.
They're all contained within feeling.
Yeah, of course, sure. But the body.
Yeah. No,
the reason we're talking about jhanas, that's why I'm not talking about the feelings now.
Okay.
Jhana is a particular type of mindfulness of the body.
Okay.
That's why the body witness is the one who has developed.
Yeah.
The whole jhana practice.
Yeah.
It's the same principle,
contacted those attainments by the body.
Yeah. So it's mindfulness of the body, particularly directed. That's how you practice jhana. Yeah. And particular direction is the direction of
the body.
Yeah. So we established that the necessary basis for any hindrance to hinder you, any lust, any aversion, is you taking up the body.
Yeah.
How do you take up the body? What are the means of taking up the body? How is taking up of the body perpetuated? How is it manifested?
That's just the natural state. It's just ignorance. It's just the...
No, but ignorance needs maintenance. Ignorance is not a static thing.
Well, greed, hatred, delusion.
Yeah, how are those things manifested? How can you talk about greed, hatred, and delusion without greedy, hateful, deluded acts? By body, by speech, or by mind?
No.
Can those things be perpetuated without intention behind it?
No.
So, you're basically taking up the body by acting with the body.
Your
action paired with ignorance. Ignorant intentions in regard to the body. So how do you act with the body? Well, you act like this, you act like that. So first you need to start restraining the body. in terms of obvious unwholesome things.
Yeah.
Obvious sensuality, obvious ill will, obvious distraction, obvious unskillful states.
Precepts, sense restraint.
Not negotiable.
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing now. So that's the first way of engaging with the body. Bodily acts. Doing things with the body.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can have mind raging with ill will or sensuality.
Yeah.
But if the body remains there, left alone,
yeah,
you're not giving into the pressure to act with it,
yeah,
there is no expression of that, which means whatever unwholesome is, it's not in the domain of the body, because you're not doing it.
But it could be in the domain of speech or mind.
That's the second bit.
Yeah.
So see, it's kind of more obvious for people to see, okay, bodily actions are bodily,
yeah,
and mental actions are mental.
yes.
Speech is a type of converging point in
Yeah.
between.
Yeah.
See, you have a verbal thoughts, which are not speech,
Yeah.
but they are bodily expressed.
Yeah.
So how's that possible?
How is
Speech possible?
Possible.
You can't speak without thoughts of speaking.
No, exactly.
It's just inconceivable. Yet thoughts of speaking, even verbal, loud thoughts in your mind,
Yeah.
are not the
speech.
speech.
No.
Because if that were the speech, the Buddha would have said that's the speech. But he said speech is when you break into speech physically. That's what constitutes speech. So verbal thinking is not the speech. Obviously there is no speech without verbal thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the problem there? Is there a problem there?
Well, yeah, something about generally one's assumptions about speech. Speech is generally assumed to involve kind of me breaking out,
Yeah.
pouring
Yeah.
out.
And me always being
Engaging
mental,
with things.
basically.
Yes, the mind. Yes.
So-
verbal.
You have three ways of engaging. By body, by speech and by mind.
Mm-hmm.
By body needs to be restrained beforehand. By mind is too subtle to see directly.
Mm-hmm.
But the middle bit, the converging point, is where the speech is.
Yeah.
That's basically where the where the perversion takes place. That's why I call it a converging point.
Mm-hmm.
Because the speech in itself is physical.
Yeah.
Sounds uttered by your mouth.
It's bodily.
It's
sort of.
It is bodily.
Yeah.
It's very bodily.
But it's also a separate domain.
Exactly. Why? So it's a hybrid domain, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why it's the first one to cease, by the way. The body doesn't cease up until Fourth Jhana. Anyway, that's a digression. The point is, it's another type of engagement
Yes.
with that body. See,
So
you engage through your physical actions
Yeah.
when you assume the ownership of it. When you're projected towards pleasure from the senses, you assume pleasure in these objects, so I act, I get them.
Yes.
So that's already a perversion.
So you're basically moving out towards the pleasure out there with your body.
Yeah. Because you assume that to come first.
You think the pleasure is over there,
Exactly.
and you have to engage bodily with it.
And body engaging with it is you accessing that pleasure.
You getting it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Same with the speech.
Yeah.
Just now, it's not so much into the senses, but it's more between the body and the point of view, between the mind and the body, between the verbal thinking and pondering,
Yes.
and the body.
Yes. Okay.
See, you think, well, like everybody, when you speak, the whole notion behind, or even before you speak, the notion behind is, I have thoughts, I have sentences, I have words in my mind, I have the whole voice, and then that kind of flows into the speech out there, and it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But that's impossible. How can a mental thought flow into the material body?
Two separate domains.
Two separate domains that are simultaneously present and they never occur without each other.
Yeah.
And
But
that's the root of the confusion.
Yeah.
Not knowing the nature of that particular sankhara.
Yeah.
That's
Not
the
seeing
definition of
extent-
ignorance.
The extent of the. Yeah.
That's why one breaks into speech. So even when you speak, your thoughts can never become the bodily sounds.
No. But
they're always simultaneous with it. There are no bodily sounds without thoughts being there present.
But sort of phenomenologically, when you're speaking, that speech sort of takes the place of your thought.
See, that's the assumption of Puthujjana,
Right. Okay.
who hasn't developed jhanas. You think that your speech is taking. How how can a physical utterance of these sounds, these vibrations, take place of your thought? How? Impossible. Not having fully discerned that, to that extent you still own and possess through perversion the domain of the body, which is the domain of the senses. Fully discern the separatedness of it, inherently, impossible to join together, you will then experience the relief of the pressure of the senses that were exhibited on the body. And that is the first jhana. That's why the speech will cease in the first jhana. So you want to cultivate that. Sense restraint needs to be done first and maintained throughout, of course. And then practice anchoring of your peripheral awareness, as we spoke before, as in recollecting of your mindfulness, recollecting the fact that you're not speaking while you're thinking verbally.
Mm-hmm.
So you're cultivating the basically discernment of the two simultaneous domains that are inseparable from each other, but you're not confounding them anymore,
speech
because exactly, speech and the thought.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're like vachi sankhara, the determination of your speech, because it's inseparable from it. And it's not discerning.
Just to Vitakka Vichara, thinking and pondering. Is the determination for speech.
Thinking and pondering is anything.
You can't have speech without thinking and pondering.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're inseparable from. But see, in that practice of anchoring your mindfulness in the absence of speech, the mouth that's factually quiet, not producing sound, you can then understand the extent of thinking and pondering without confusing it for speech.
Because
that's why silence, physical solitude, and not careless chit chat and so on is absolutely necessary, and the Buddha could have not been like cleared and have a more hardline stance on it than he did.
So thinking that the speech stands for the thoughts is the same thing as basically saying that the thoughts kind of become speech. Basically, you aren't seeing these two separate domains.
Now you can ask, well, why is the speech converging point? That's just how things are. That's how the aggregates are ordered. That's not up to you to decide. The fact is, it is. And for as long as you're confounding it, means there is ignorance in regard to that entire basis. And whenever there is ignorance, there is the automatic appropriation.
So having sort of distanced yourself from sense desire, sensuality, and unwholesome restraint.
Non-distraction, no careless projects and little whatever, however meaningful it might present itself, no little activities. Because all that is rooted in distraction or sensuality. It has to be. Unless you're completely free from those things, in which case you won't be doing it. So having practiced that, you also need to practice physical solitude. Doesn't mean you never see people, you never talk. It means you talk only with a purpose. The actual purpose, not pressure or need, which is not the purpose. So you cultivate that, like as the Buddha said, the monks should train themselves in little speech, speaking little.
Put limits on their speech.
It's only when necessary.
And then,
all that is to support your mindfulness of the factual recognition. It's a form of thought, but it's a factually correct thought that you are not speaking. See, my mind can be shouting mad, but I can simultaneously, through that, peripherally discern that my mouth is not uttering any sounds. Thus, there is no wrongly assumed connection between my thought. The moment I forget that my mouth is not uttering the sounds, I can very well basically immediately jump back into the entire...
Form a link.
Exactly. Not being aware of it, it's automatic link. It's automatic sort of mess, so to speak. Clutter. But once you dwell long enough, that's why you should cultivate jhanas, don't be negligent, make effort, discern, and so on, like in so many suttas. Is because you will become so familiar with the... I guess you can call it a relationship between the presence of a mouth able to utter sounds and the presence of verbal thinking, the two separate domains. But you will also then fully understand that it doesn't matter how careless you are, verbal thoughts can never enter the extent of speech. So it's always thinking and pondering, one breaks into speech. Like literally two simultaneous things, no other form of connection. Any form of connection means form of misconceiving.
So the not speaking can be the background.
It is
your
the container of your thinking and pondering, the extent of your thinking and pondering. Yeah. And for as long as you remain mindful of, again, and the reason why you can remain mindful is because you're not doing it. You are not, I'm mindful of my mouth, I'm mindful of my mouth. No, not at all. You're simply mindful of the thought that the mouth is not speaking. So it's a negative form of doing.
Yeah.
That's why, like, if somebody listens to this, they might think like, oh, mindful of the sensations in your mouth. No.
It's just that you're not speaking.
Exactly. You can be mindful of all the sensations and still cause the confusion between your thoughts and the domain of speech.
Yeah.
Because it's not about what you're looking at, it's about the basis of you not making any sounds while there is verbal thinking going on.
And so if you've got like a clear background, the fact that I'm not speaking to whatever it is I'm thinking about, then that to me...
Even if you lapse within that, whatever you're thinking about, you can't lapse for as long as you don't start making sound with your mouth.
Yeah.
If your mindfulness has been properly anchored. Same with mindfulness of the body posture.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much you forget, when you recollect it, you recollect the right order.
It was always, exactly.
The posture hasn't changed, the mouth hasn't spoken.
Yeah.
If the mouth starts speaking, stop speaking. And you again re-establish the anchor.
But what I was going to say was then it's like that background of the fact that I'm not speaking, that provides a background for the domain of thinking and pondering. In other words, it basically allows for the unification of mind. It becomes clear.
It's a form of unification of the mind.
Well, that's the extent of mind because it's seen against this background of within
exactly.
the fact that I'm not speaking.
And thinking and pondering is basically literally the entire extent from anything, from the subtlest thoughts to the most coarse verbal, having a song repeated in your mind that you can't shut down.
Yeah.
It's all the domain of thinking and pondering. And even if you, based on that, are thinking about your mouth...
Anything that appears.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's the extent of the all in that state. That's why you fully understand that. Any Dhamma that manifests in the first jhana is clearly seen, as in all the five aggregates are clearly seen as not mine, not belonging to me. That's why first jhana is the necessary basis for the culmination of wisdom, to be an arahant. Again, clarity of mindfulness, because it's the clarity of imperturbable order. That this is the container of this. And it's inconceivable, doesn't matter how much I forget, how careless I get, it's inconceivable that this can become that or vice versa.
Yeah.
The domain of bodily remains the container of this.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, you can, if your mindfulness is developed to the extent necessary on a kind of, mindfulness of breathing or mindfulness of death, doesn't matter. You can then turn that extent of your mindfulness to the mindfulness of the converging point of natural engagements between you and the body, so to speak, between the mental and the physical, and establish jhana, and then take it further. Then for the second jhana, I won't dwell into it too much because this is more than enough, and people will start thinking about second jhana without even understanding what the first is.
Yeah.
But from the point of view of the second jhana, the thinking and pondering is the physical.
Is the container.
Yeah, exactly.
Within which
unified mind that doesn't.
Yeah.
That's why second jhana is called noble silence, by the way, not the first jhana.
Yeah.
First jhana you can't speak.
Yeah.
But that's not the noble silence.
No, noble silence.
The silence is when the mind stops speaking as well.
Surmounting the thinking and pondering. Yeah.
So you want to stop thinking, you got to stop speaking with your mind, which is the second jhana. And you won't get there until you get the first one. And you won't get the first one for as long as you think you can get it as a thing. You can get it by cultivating the basis for it.
It's a consequence.
It's a consequence, exactly. That's why if it were not consequence, it would be something you are doing.
Yes.
And then we will say like, oh, you can't say in jhana, I am entering the first jhana, I'm practicing the first jhana, I'm obtaining the first jhana, I'm leaving the first jhana.
Yeah.
Yet in the jhana you can't say that. Doesn't mean you're not aware of anything. That's not the reason why you can't say. You can't say because you're not doing it. It's result of things you've done, such as surmounting sensuality. anchoring your peripheral recollectedness in the fact that factually mouth is abstaining, not speaking, not uttering sounds. And it's been doing so for a while. That's why, like having been secluded from sensuality, sensual pleasure, joy from seclusion arises, one abides in jhana having acquired it. Doesn't mean, as I said before, like maybe it took you a whole month to surmount the sensual domain. Before then the result of you abiding in that state becomes the jhana. Or it can take you half a day. Sometimes more, sometimes not, depending how careless you were, if you were careless. That's why once you cultivate it long enough, it's done at will, as the suttas would say. And again, it's not. See, whenever they would say, "Oh, I don't need all of this because whoever can obtain jhanas at will," like when Mahakassapa said that, for example, "I don't need all these luxuries." Because whoever can obtain jhanas at will is like the greatest, basically. He's saying that as a matter of fact, and the reason why that is a praise, he can obtain jhanas at will, is because he done all the work. Like you wouldn't, mind you, ignorant mind would take praise on account of anything, but a rational mind that is authentic, would recognize, there is a praise of random things that you had nothing to do with. Oh, look how tall you are. I had no say in that. But look how virtuous you are. Look how well kind of mannered or well read or intelligent and reasonable you are, because you made the effort, and that is a legitimate praise because you invested it. Jhanas is the utmost effort you can make in that sense. That's why it's the best praise. Whoever can obtain them at will means not he was lucky to get them, means he done such an extent of this anchoring mindfulness proper work that literally at will everything is there. No, because he just, won the jackpot and it just happens to him. Oh, he's so lucky. Why would you praise that? Oh, you're lucky and nothing to do with you. So anchoring your mindfulness in the recognition of a mouth that is not uttering sounds. That is a converging point. Mind you, when it comes to speech, writing, typing, all those would be means of physical converging of your expression. But the chief of them is the mouth. And that's why, again, sensuality is inherently inseparable from the notion of your mouth as well. So it's the first point of engagement with sensuality. When you're a toddler, breastfeeding, eating, it's the first point of satisfaction. And it always remains. Like as I said, your sensuality can proliferate, your preferences can proliferate, the expression of your real will can proliferate. Fundamentally, it's all still within the mouth. Just its density keeps increasing the more you engage with it. But it cannot become anywhere else except from the container of the mouth, because that's the first point of engagement with the body. The first point of confusion,
so to convergence speak. Between mind and body.
Mind is there, body is there. Yet for you, mouth is kind of pertains to the mental and pertains to the physical. How's that possible?
You can't.
Not fully clarifying that, that's how you own both. Or that's how you get affected by both. And again, that's why the recognition of that is actually impossible. It's inconceivable. Doesn't matter how verbal thinking is, it's inconceivable for it to become the sounds from your mouth. The way it happens is just on this level, on these two simultaneous levels. That's why you fully understand that it doesn't matter what kind of thought you had, how threatening, fearful, you will not be afraid, no threatened, because you realize, that's where this is manifested, and it's actually inconceivable.
And so now that's going back to
same with your will, by the way.
Restraint. So you talked about bodily restraint. Having thoughts of ill will, say, but just making sure that you don't do anything. But now you're just sort of describing how to restrain yourself on the verbal level. Exactly,
which then restrains your mind. The only reason your mind was not restrained is because it was under the assumption that it can pertain to that which concerns me, which is the external world of the senses. But you realize the mind can never step into it, nor can it become the mind otherwise. It's just physical, mental, bodily, and on the level of the mind. Sure, fundamentally it's all mental in terms of it's all Dhamma manifesting itself, but that's a different approach. This is the approach of jhana.
Which is about understanding this converging point between the
points of
domain,
engagement with the body, which
the
is a
body
necessary
domain.
basis for any sensuality to affect you, to pressure you, to pertain to you. So when that order becomes uncorruptible by your ignoring, by your carelessness, you are abiding in that which you've acquired, which is the right order, which is what jhana is. That's why they're always wholesome. You can't have unwholesome jhana. Impossible. Because unwholesomeness is defined, as we said before in other talks, by the perversion of the order. That's the definition. That's why unwholesome things are unwholesome, because they contain a contradiction. Repulsive as attractive. In jhana, that's impossible. That's why it's impossible for them to be unwholesome.
And so again in First Jhana, so we said at the beginning that overcoming sensuality involves putting the body first, recognizing, not putting it first, but seeing that it is first.
Seeing that it is first, discerning it.
Not,
yeah. It's an essay, and not like first initially and then changes. It remains first.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter the extent of sensual pressure, engagement, it remains first.
It can't not be.
Within that you discern even a more specific manifestation of that order
which
of the
is
body.
again body first, which is
your mouth.
Yeah.
And your thoughts.
Yeah. So it's still that
because that's exactly what sensuality is.
It's the container.
The body and the thoughts.
Yeah.
In regard to everything that the body can go for.
Rather than the usual kind of I use my body or I...
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah. So the only way that mindfulness of presently enduring, non-speaking mouth, the only way that can become intelligible is on the basis of thorough sense restraint.
Yeah.
Celibacy, withdrawal from sensuality, ill will. That's how you get to understand all the other hindrances as well. You see that it doesn't matter how much sleepiness, restlessness might be, like how heavy it might be, you won't be bearing that weight for as long as you don't pervert the order of what comes first, which is the body. So this is, whether you want it or not, it cannot be anywhere else except on the bodily domain.